Welcome Wargamers, my name is Doug with 2+ Stuff, and today we're going to solve a problem. You see, I get several emails, comments, those kinds of things, direct messages from kind folks asking about how they can get started in the game. And when I say get started, I mean specifically how can they get started at playing at home or in their garage. This is especially useful in 2020 when most stores really just aren't available for gaming for many regions. It's so easy to forget that many times new folks have questions like, how much terrain do I need? How can I get it all without breaking the bank? And so today we're going to tackle these things head on. Now, of course, Games Workshop does sell their own terrain, but the problem I find with that is it's not very cohesive, their offerings that they have specifically for Age of Sigmar. What I mean by that is you might have like a dais over here, 2 realm gates around the corner, and then some random witch tower that you're not quite sure how it got there. The point is none of it is cohesive and makes a story to be told upon the table. So I reached out to my good friends over at 3D Egos over on Etsy, who you can find their link in the description down below, along with coupon codes to save you a bunch of money. And essentially I asked them, they gave me free reign to create 3 different bundles that'll save you time and money and get you gaming right away. Each of these sets has a different feel and flavor. 2 are predominantly for Age of Sigmar and 1 is more for Warcry. So in this video, I wanted to walk through the 3 different sets that I created personally based off of their inventory and how they can each add to your hobby and your games at home. Now, of course, you don't have to shop at 3D Egos. They're just really cool guys. The reason I say that is because the principles that I discussed in this video are going to be applicable to anything, right? As I'm showing you why I chose these things, pay attention to things like line of sight blocking terrain, scatter terrain, stuff like that. I just really do think that you can save a buttload of money with this coupon code, and it's very affordable, and honestly, it's very easy. It's a nice one-click bundles, boom, you're good to go. So to kick it off, I wanted to do something very different from what Games Workshop offers. This is the joy of going third party. And if you are a Gloomspite Gitz player, or you just like the kind of wild fantasy aesthetic, you are already on board, because this one is called the Dankgloom Caverns. In my opinion, what makes a fantastic table is typically some large centerpiece terrain that blocks line of sight, kind of divides up the table just a bit, and then a bunch of scatter pieces that all feed into that same aesthetic. It's how tables can tell wonderful stories. And I can't stress enough how important it is to have line of sight blocking terrain in this edition simply because of the amount of shooting that's out there, but also having these other pieces of terrain out there that can all have terrain effects. And so all of those combined can make a really tactical game, and it just adds a lot of life to the board. So bringing those principles into the Dankgloom Caverns, you'll see there are a bunch of small pieces that could be great objectives or scatter terrain. But the main event here are these raised shroom grotto pieces, is technically what it's called. They have a lot of versatility with both blocking line of sight for smaller models like say handgunners and things like that, but you can also put them right beside one another to make a awesome wall. So if you were going to do a siege battle like we just did over at Rerolling Ones, I would absolutely suggest, if you have a Gloomspite Gitz player, this is a way that you can have a narrative siege battle. They're surging into different tunnels of the camps and things like that. The other sets I'm going to cover have a lot of character all on their own, but this one wins in terms of versatility simply because the modular nature of those kind of raised platforms. You can make incredibly large pieces. You can put them together to make one massive piece of terrain, or scatter them around, or any combination therein. So it is enough to fill a table and give it life. And again, you don't have to paint it up as if it were Gloomspite Gitz. It could be something like a Sylvaneth Grove where there's lots of fairy colors and things like that. There's a lot of ways that you can use these things to paint them to fit whatever you want your army to kind of be from or be fighting in. So up next is the Streets of Chaos, my personal favorite. And really my mentality going into this was, how do I make Warcry better? Okay, just in terms of visual aesthetics and interest, but also how do I increase the value of terrain that I already own? If you are somebody who's been in the hobby for a while, you probably own a few terrain kits, and it's little things like in this set that really go a long way to adding so much life to those sets. And I'm going to walk through what I mean by that. A common criticism I see about wargaming terrain is, oh look, yet another destroyed building. How original! How many are these in the world? But that sentiment isn't always solely about using specifically buildings, right? It's more the fact that these buildings don't feel like they make up a real environment, or that this environment is very repetitive. So the idea of this bundle is really to say, okay, lots of folks have ruined buildings, so instead of reinventing the wheel, how can we bring them to life? To me, it's these little bits and bobs that actually, when you put them on the table, allow you to tell a real story. Because now all of a sudden your characters aren't just moving between terrain pieces, they're weaving through corridors, through piers, over, all this little scatter terrain, they're hiding behind crates. It just adds a lot of flavor and makes the world feel very lived in. Now, I'll be honest, this set will work much better for folks who already have some terrain, like say example, you grabbed the starter set for Warcry or something like that, or you have a few buildings, and it works especially well if you're playing something like Warcry, Frostgrave, Relic Blade, any number of fantasy miniatures games. It fills the streets out, makes them look lived in, adds more vertical structures, which is important as many of those games I mentioned use elevation in their mechanics. However, if you have absolutely no terrain, this is not really a problem. And the reason I say that is because if you're familiar with the, oh man, what are they calling it now? The Sigmar Mausoleum, whatever the graveyard kit is for Warcry. Essentially, that is just a whole bunch of small little bits of terrain that used to, when you played fantasy battles, come together to form kind of this one brick, and that brick was one singular piece of terrain. Well, it's kind of the same principle here, where you can put all these things together and have one piece of terrain that is the market, as well as you can take all the individual bits and use them in creation of very flavorful objective markers. And honestly, we're going to talk about this a little bit more in the third one, but having interesting objectives is a really important part of a fun table, because no time in history of mankind has two armies met on the battlefield to fight over a poker chip. You know what I mean? Like, you got to add something that's a little more interesting than that. And certainly if you're just looking to bolster a collection, or you're looking to start a collection of terrain and have some objectives, there's really some great things in here that you can use as threads for telling a narrative game. And the last terrain package that I have is the Ultimate Starter Set. And really, my idea here was, what is the lowest common denominator? What do you just bare bones need to start playing at home? So I threw this together and combined with something like a battle mat that you can match the colors to, it's going to be amazing. And so this setup is a whole bunch of cool canyon walls and arches, a set of unique objectives, because they matter as we mentioned before, and a great centerpiece building, this watchtower thing. Now in my head, I was pitching this as a fallen outpost in Gur, Realm of Beasts, and you can see this is really the simplest way to cover all the basics we mentioned before. Characterful objectives, so your forces have a reason to battle, great line of sight blocking terrain, and then something special that draws the eye, meaning the tower. Heck, all of this can be used in armies on parade like it was a diorama or something like that. And just like with the Dankgloom Caverns, all of these wonderful pieces of terrain can be used individually, of course, but then you can link them together to make walls, barriers, cutoffs, things like that. And while the second bundle that I cover today edges more towards like skirmish games and things like that, this is a full army one. This is one where you're going to need room for large blocks of troops to move, but enough terrain to separate them so that a shooting army can't just move to the center of the board and just hose everyone down and fire. There's enough versatility in these formations that you can account for extremely large armies, shooting ones and so on. So by controlling the placement of these pieces, you can really curate what kind of game you're going to want to have. At the end of the day, I went through their entire catalog and I put these things together for the sheer purpose of helping people. Like, I get enough questions about them that I can now direct them to this video, and also the guys at 3D Egos. And honestly, with the way the world is going right now, gaming at home and AOS Garage Hammer, it's only going to be on the increase, and things like this make it so much easier and more accessible for people. Now, as for these kits, they paint up very, very easily. I'm going to be doing a few paint tutorials here on the channel with some of them. I think you'll enjoy it quite a bit, and a lot of this terrain is going to feature very heavily, once it's painted, of course, in my Warcry campaign, which I'm going to be getting into coming this year, so starting in January. Now, there are a few things I want to say about this terrain company, 3D Egos, because it might seem strange, it seems like they came out of nowhere, but they are a design partner with printablescenery.com. It's actually a huge deal. It's a huge resource if you own a 3D printer to get files, stuff like that. Well, for people like me who don't have one, these guys are a great source of this printed material. All of this stuff is printed over in California, United States, and my viewers, like I said before, actually have a code that'll save you 25% off of your purchase. Just use the code 2PlusTough, as you see down below. I also have it in the description down below at checkout, and that's across all the kits, and with the number of kits that I put into these bundles, that's a huge chunk of savings. And for the purposes of being totally transparent and honest with y'all, this is an affiliate code. Any purchases you make with it do go to help support the channel in a small way. It's not a whole lot, it costs you nothing, and again, the savings are massive. Normally I don't go for these kinds of things, that you don't see that a whole lot on this channel, but the fact that the guys over there gave me free reign of just like, let me make something that actually helps people, was a slam dunk. It was just exactly what I was looking for. You can return any product that you buy from them with a full refund within 30 days, and after 30 days, if anything breaks on your product, say like a railing breaks or something like that from your own use, you can actually request a replacement part from that, and they'll ship it to you, just a small fee to cover the shipping, and they got their back. So they guarantee all their products, and I like that in a company. If you have any questions about the bundles, you can see the links in the description down below, and also head over to their Etsy store directly. And if that doesn't answer anything, head over to Etsy, reach out to the actual, their page that you can see. They're very responsive. They were very easy to communicate with for me. These make fantastic holiday bundles, and I just wanted to thank you all so much for watching. Go check these guys out and save yourself some money.